Middle camera to the left camera? Okay.
The Catwalk Podcast showcases the greatest of the people of the Permian Basin through partnering and conversation with high-level leaders, social entrepreneurs, nonprofit leadership, and industry executives.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Catwalk this week. Thank you so much for joining with us. I want to introduce to you our special guest today, Derrick Clark. Derrick is from Houston, Texas, graduated from Deer Park High School in 2009, played football at Texas State for 1 year, then transferred to the University of Houston where he graduated in 2014 with a degree in Criminology. After college, Derrick worked for a logistics company in Houston and then on to an equipment rental company which transferred him here to Midland. In 2016, Derrick was awarded the Outside Sales Representative of the Year through Nationwide with over 300 representatives. Derrick opened his first company, Pinnacle Contract Services, in 2019, supplying third-party diesel mechanic services, primarily in construction and midstream. However, due to COVID, Derrick and his partner closed Pinnacle in late 2020. Currently, Derrick is consulting for Dean Services as their business development manager, providing midstream and environmental services. He is a board member of the Permian Basin Association of Pipeliners. Derrick is married to Lacey, and they have two boys, Drew and Dallas. The Catwalk is very proud to welcome our special guest today, Derrick Clark.
Elevate your operation with Performance Chemical Company, the pioneers in redefining chemical solutions for the oil and gas industry in the Permian Basin. Unveiling groundbreaking ideas since 2017, our dry chemistry plant stands as a testament to innovation. Our products and services revolutionize water treatment, production, midstream, and saltwater disposals. We're your strategic partners in optimizing investments, slashing operating expenses. Performance Chemical Company. How you get there matters.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Catwalk. Thank you so much for joining with us today. I'm your host, Jay Whitlow, and as always, sitting right across from the table from me is the great Chris DeGaulle. Chris, what's up?
Not a lot. How are you?
You doing good?
I'm good.
How was that lunch today?
It was hot out.
It was hot out. Today's the first 100-degree day, I think.
This weekend we were 102.
Oh, and it's not even Memorial Day yet.
Nope,
We're already over 3 digits now of heat.
Get ready for 120-degree summer.
I bet that's going to be that way. Well, we are also excited and very privileged to have with us our special guest today, Chris. This is my good friend, Derrick Clark. Derrick, welcome to the Catwalk.
Hey, absolutely. I appreciate it, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
This is exciting. I've wanted to have you on for quite some time. Been seeing you around some events and stuff, and so grateful that you are joining with us. So I wanted to start off by saying this is a first for me. I have 3 kids, and they are now all high school graduates. We graduated our youngest last weekend. She went to Liberty University Online Academy and graduated.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
very nice.
So we flew up to Virginia, and she walked the stage, and then we went up into D.C. and toured the Capitol and all things government offices and stuff. In fact, the day we got home was the day they found the Ziploc of cocaine in the Capitol, and I was like, wow, I didn't know I dropped it. But what I wanted to ask, and I want to ask you first, Chris, and then I want to get Derrick's. Now that I have all 3 of my kids out of high school, did you have a favorite high school class? Was there a grade or a specific class that you just loved when you were in high school? Can you think back that far?
Well, yeah, I don't think there's anything that I was like overly excited about, right? Like, I was a band kid, but it was work. So it didn't really, I was like, oh, yeah, I can't wait. But maybe I took an applied physics class. So basically you took experiments and then you put them in practical usage.
Yuck.
And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no.
I think I went opposite of you on that one.
I think
that'd probably been my last favorite class.
But that was under the ag umbrella, and most of my ag classes were a lot of fun. So, but yeah.
I guess ag classes would be fun. Yeah. Were you a 4.0 student?
Oh, no. No, I graduated with a 3.2.
Oh, okay. I graduated with a 4, but it was on the other side of the decimal.
Yes.
than the
Yes.
correct side. So, Derrick, how about you? Was there a favorite grade or class that you enjoyed in high school?
Yeah, so I can look back. Actually, criminology. My senior year in high school, I took an elective class just to fill my schedule and really enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting learning about the mob and the criminal organizations and how they operate. And so that kind of led me into actually studying criminology in college.
Wow. So the mob. Do you have a favorite mob boss or?
Oh, probably Gambino. I know that's probably a favorite for a lot because he's probably one of the more popular ones. But yeah, no, I just thought it was interesting to see how people could build these multi-level organizations under,
Right.
basically the underworld of it, right? I mean, having to do it in a legal, normal world is tough enough, and then finding ways to do it outside of the law without getting caught.
Right.
It's a lot of creative geniuses on that side of it. So
Wow.
I found all that to be very, very interesting.
Criminology.
Yeah.
And you're in oil and gas, so I guess it works, right? I guess that's a good marriage there,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I kind of went a different path afterwards.
You
but
did.
yeah.
Well, I was talking about my kids graduating. You're on the other side of that spectrum, right? You've got a 1.5-year-old
Correct.
and would you say 8 weeks?
8 weeks.
Okay,
Yeah.
tell me about your family.
Yeah. So my wife Lacey, I met her out here when I moved to Midland. I guess that was about 5 years ago now. We were fortunate. We started our family in. We got married in 2020, which was a fiasco thanks to COVID.
It's a COVID wedding.
It was a COVID wedding.
COVID wedding,
But
yeah.
we got through it. We got everything handled. It was beautiful. We had a great time. From there, we had our first son, Drew, in 2022.
Okay.
So, and then we had our second son, Dallas, 8 weeks ago. So,
Now, the name Dallas, where does that come from? Are you like a Cowboy fan or?
no, and my wife told me I was going to hear that over and over
Yeah.
again. I'm actually a Texans fan. I'm from Houston originally. so,
Congratulations.
yes,
Yeah.
I appreciate
I
that.
can't stand Dallas.
Yeah, well, you and me
Not
both.
your son.
No,
Yeah, not your son. Let me rephrase that.
He's probably a big fan of the show, Dallas. He's been wondering who shot JR since like '84.
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
that's my generation, not you guys' generation.
So what's
I'm
funny-
surprised you even know that.
Oh, so my mom was so obsessed with that show. For 3 years in a row, our family vacation was taking a trip out to the ranch that they shot
yeah.
the show at.
Yeah.
Every 3 years in a row, I was like, how many times can you look at this ranch?
At this white
It
building.
doesn't change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I call that dedication. I don't see anything wrong with that.
She's
I like
a dedicated woman to
Dedication.
her
That's
soap opera.
Consistency right there. I
Yes.
like it.
That is good. Okay, so tell me more about your journey and your family.
Yeah. And then to answer your question, so Dallas was not from the Cowboys.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Ironically, all the men have D names in my family.
Okay.
And we're up to like 16 D names. I mean, it's getting
Really?
it's getting out of hand, and
That many of them.
we're starting to run, starting to run out of D names here. And so whenever we found out we were having a second boy, my wife's first thought was, "Great, we have to have another D name,
Yeah.
right?" And I said, "Yes, we do." And so we settled on
Wow.
Dallas, which was my first pick. It wasn't hers, but that's where we ended up at. But it had no affiliation to the Cowboys.
Right.
And unfortunately, my son will probably hear that until the day he dies.
You will.
So
So what do you do? Like, you'll eventually run out of D names,
I
right?
guess we're
So
just
do you
gonna start
Do
the
you start
seconds
making up names?
Possibly. We got some creative family members, so that may be the next play that we have. And ironically, my cousin just had a baby. He named his son Denver. And then
Oh, we're getting the whole NFL team.
that's what that's what I'm saying. We're basically hitting every major
Any other
city across.
D names in there?
You know,
DC.
I'll say Dakota was going to be one that we looked
Yeah.
at. Dawson, but that doesn't have any affiliation with any teams. But yeah, we slowly starting to hit every major city we can.
funny.
But yeah, so I moved out here, met my wife. We started our family, and very fortunate, very blessed. I am on the opposite side of the scale as you right now, as I'm first having to figure everything out. It's a whole new schedule. It's a whole new lifestyle. But I love it, and I'm just a little sleep deprived and
Yeah.
highly caffeinated right now, but we're surviving. We're getting through. So everything's been good.
Right. Well, my only advice would be because I'm sleep deprived and highly caffeinated, but it's because they're all in their 20s and 19 and graduated and stuff. They're not all off the payroll yet. They're still on the payroll, but it's a little different. But my advice would be to you is, and anyone listening who has younger kids, is don't lose sight of all the seasons. Enjoy every season. Enjoy being sleep deprived when they're 1 and 8 weeks old, because before you know it, they're going to be walking the stage like mine is. So you played football, I think, at Texas State. Is that right?
Yes, very
Tell
briefly.
me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I graduated. So I'm originally from Houston in the Deer Park area. I graduated in '09 and then had a chance to go to Texas State right out of high school to play football.
Right.
I was actually an offensive tackle and an offensive guard, so I was probably another 80 pounds heavier than what I am right now. And it was
You good?
I was okay. I got to college and realized there was a lot bigger and a lot stronger and a lot faster guys
Right.
out there. So I think that's the fun part, especially going to a larger D1, even D2 schools, even JUCOs. It really doesn't matter. When you get to that next level, you're all of a sudden in a much bigger pond of talent. So I enjoyed it. I only played for my first year. I ended up transferring back to U of H because it was a smarter financial decision. And I was actually able to get an academic scholarship at that point to help cover some of the costs of school. And so it was the hardest decision I ever made, though, because football was my life since I started playing in 3rd grade. And I played every year. Football was who I was. I kind of had a self-identity wrapped around football. And after I left football, it took me a little time to figure out who I really was. And prior to that, if anybody ever asked about me, I just said, "Oh, I play football," and then they automatically had this idea of who I was.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that because that is who I was. I genuinely was the jock, and I enjoyed it, and sports were everything to me. I got to college, and I found out pretty quick. Number one, playing at that weight was really hard for me. My knees, my ankles, physically, my body was taking a beating.
Right.
And all that would have been worth it if I ever thought there might have been a chance to play at the next level, play on Sundays, and get paid to play the game like that. But I realized pretty quickly after my first year, I said, you know what, I don't see me going pro. Through an academic scholarship, I had about the same financial aid I was getting from football. So it made more sense to me. And the other reason, a big part was, I grew up with a single mom, and so I pretty much had a job since I was 14, mowing yards or doing side work or doing whatever I could. When I turned 16, I actually had a job, worked in a restaurant, waited tables. And when I got to college, I know I now did not have time for a job.
Right.
And I was solely having to rely on my mom to send me money. It was putting a financial burden on her. I was just taking out more student loans. I started doing the math, and I could have stayed and continued to play, and it would have been a great experience. But I was on a half scholarship, so they paid for pretty much half of everything. And with me being off at Texas State, I found it was just more financially feasible for me to go back to Houston, finish up my school there. I was able to work. Without playing football, I had time to work. When you're playing football, you're literally,
24/7.
Yeah. Your schedule is from sun up to sundown. You had breakfast check-ins, you had class, you had weight room, you had practice, you had video, then you had study hall, and it was a constant grind. We were traveling during the season, so I just didn't have time for anything else but football. And so I decided it was probably best I moved on. It was the hardest decision I ever made because I remember hanging up my pads for the last time and literally tears filling up in my eyes because it was just a big part of who I was growing up. And so
Who was your coach at Texas State?
So the offensive line coach was a gentleman named Ben Norton.
Ben Norton, okay.
And he, after I left there, I stayed in touch with a lot of the football players, and I'm still friends with some of them today. He left. I think the following season they had a lot of change up because they fired the head coach that was there when I was there, Brad Wright, brought in a new team. He kind of brought his team, and so there was a lot of change up on the coaching staff.
Did you have one game that you remember that was like that? Awesome. That was your Super Bowl or your national championship game? Or?
Well, we didn't have the best of seasons when I was there. They actually won the conference the year before I was there.
Okay.
2 years before I was there. Had some change up in coaching.
Right.
It was kind of a rebuilding for the program at the time. I do remember us traveling over to Nickel State in Louisiana. Had a phenomenal game. I was actually redshirted, so I didn't spend much time on the actual field, but I had to travel and be a part.
Sure.
And it was just one of those games where you could feel the electricity in the air. Everybody was on pins and needles. Same thing with McNeese State. You know, I remember we traveled to Louisiana 3 weeks in a row, which was brutal because you're on a big bus with a lot of guys, and we're all
long drive. Yeah,
it's a long drive. We're all crammed in there tight, and it's a lot of large guys. So there's not a whole lot of free space just floating around. But you know,
You're
those.
pretty tall. How tall are you?
So when I was playing, it was 6'4", 310.
Wow.
Was my weight.
Okay.
And
Wow.
and now,
Yeah,
I was heavy. I had to put on a lot of size in between high school and college. So that was probably another reason me wanting to leave is I just don't think my body could have sustained that size for the 4 to 5 years I would have been there playing without having major knee surgeries or ankles or just injuries that I would have carried throughout my normal day-to-day life today.
Man, I didn't know that about you. That's pretty cool. What was your number?
66.
66. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
It was a great experience. It was something I'm glad I did it. Looking back, I kind of wish I had stuck one more year.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was just the right decision for me and my family for me to
Right.
get back to Houston and take care of a couple other obligations we had. So, but it was still a phenomenal experience. Texas State, go Bobcats. I fell in love with San Marcos.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great city.
It is, and any chance I get to travel back through there, I always try to stop off and have a couple of adult beverages and maybe a couple tacos and just
There you go. Yeah.
enjoy the river over there.
Yeah.
So
All right. So you went to Houston. You graduated from there with criminology.
correct.
All right. So walk me through. You hung up the pads. You're done with football. You're moving toward, I'm assuming, toward that degree, wanting to do something in that field, or did you just say, you know what, I got the degree, I want to go do something else? Walk me through that part.
So yes and no. I did in high school. I took criminology, and I was really a lost kid. I mean, aside from football, I didn't have focus on a whole lot of other things. It was girls and football, right? That was pretty much. And I didn't have that big picture thinking of what I wanted to do with my life. And so I took that criminology class in high school, had a really great teacher, and he was a previous police officer who worked up into detective. And just hearing a lot of his stories and getting to hear a lot about what he did throughout his career, I was attracted to it. Of course, I was much younger in those days, so the adrenaline junkie in me was much more enthusiastic about some of the duties that police officer and law enforcement have to deal with. But long story short, I got into college. I took criminology for a couple reasons. I thought it was interesting. I knew it was going to be classes that I would, most likely keep my attention. I definitely wasn't going to be a physics major or chemistry major or anything chemical related like we were talking about with your company here. Yeah. It was the least amount of math, which was a plus for me for a degree program.
Yes, sir.
And I did want to go into law enforcement. That was initially my plan. I wanted to, finish up, work my way from police officer into detective type role.
Okay,
much like a lot of us, we watch a lot of these shows and these movies, and it's a very attractive career on paper.
I was going to say just that. I also have a criminology degree, and it's solely because I've watched every episode of Law and Order. So we're on the same page.
Absolutely.
Same thing.
Honestly, you probably know more than I do after watching all of them. I can guarantee it. I pretty much by junior year had a change of heart. I had learned so much about the criminology system, the criminal justice system. I had toured multiple prisons. I'd done ride-alongs. Really jumped into it. A lot of our classes required that. So it forced me to go out and get some field experience with other law enforcement. And I found I really didn't want anything to do with it.
Really?
And what you see on the movies isn't necessarily what happens in real life. There's a lot more paperwork. I had a professor explain it the best. He said, law enforcement's basically 90% boredom and 10% pure chaos.
Wow.
And he said, and when that happens, he said, you spend a lot of your time waiting for things to happen, and when things do happen, well, then now you're in the middle of everything that's happening. Right. So you go from hot to cold very quickly. And I hate to say, I don't think our society looks at law enforcement and treats them accordingly and how they should. Everybody has a phone. Everybody's always, you see a million videos on Facebook or whatever social media you like, always trying to catch law enforcement doing wrong, always seeing one side of the video, never seeing the full story. And I just feel like it was a career path that I knew was going to create a lot of problems for me.
Yeah.
It was also a job I learned that it's not like you clock out and you go home
That's true. 24/7. Yeah.
and you wash off that day, right? I mean, for a lot of us, we have a bad day at the office. We lose a client. We have a project going south. I mean, we still have our stresses, but we didn't have to, scrape up a motorcycle accident.
Right.
Or we didn't, have to walk in and see something that you're just not going to forget.
Yeah.
And I have buddies who were, actually with HPD in Houston. A couple of them work in some of the rougher areas, and
They got stories.
they do. And I mean, they've had guns pulled on them. They've been shot at. One of them's been stabbed. They've had to use their weapons at times to
Yeah.
protect themselves. It's just a very tough career path.
Yeah.
And then financially on that side of it, unfortunately, much like teachers and other positions on that side, they just don't get paid what they should.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
And I guess the final thing that drove the nail in the coffin for me is that majority of my professors all came from a background in law enforcement.
Okay.
And every single one of them said, if you have a degree and you have the opportunity to do something else, I recommend you do that.
Wow.
And so when you have people who have 20 plus years experience doing what you're looking at doing, and I had multiple, not just one professor, I had multiple professors with that same attitude and mentality
Like trying to pull you away from
away from it.
You're not called or wanting to do that. Get as far away as you can.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And so I graduated, and at that point, my junior year, I realized that this isn't for me. But like a lot of college kids, I was stuck in my program, and I knew if I changed my degree, I would either have to retake a bunch of classes, or a lot of my classes may not transfer over to that other degree.
Right.
And essentially costing me more time and money. And I was at the point I just wanted to be done with
Get out.
college.
Yeah.
And so that was my mentality is, just get the degree. We'll figure it out after we graduate. And so that's kind of what led me. And eventually me heading into sales was, purely I guess by chance and by luck. I really found that I enjoyed working with people. When I was in college, I waited tables and I bartended. That was the main job I had throughout it. And I really enjoyed the interaction with people. And, if you've ever been to a restaurant or bar, there's a lot of people coming in. And so you're constantly dealing with a wide range of people from all different backgrounds. And I found that I really just enjoyed working with people more than anything. Sometimes not always the case,
Yeah,
but
that's true. Yeah.
most of the time. And so a friend of mine's mom actually is the one who said, hey, we're hiring at our company. I'd like for you to put an application in. I know you don't have any experience, but I've known you for 15 years and you're a natural salesman. I think you could come in here and do a great job. I ended up not getting that position with her company, but it kind of sparked that idea for me. And so one of her competitors I found online, which was Blue Line Rental, and I put in an application out of their corporate office, and I got hired. And so that's actually the company that moved me to West Texas.
Is Blue Line in the oil and gas industry, or is it something that is outside of it?
So they actually are no longer in existence. They sold the company to United Rentals for X
Heard of
amount,
that name.
for
Yeah.
X amount of billions. I can't remember. It was quite a
You
acquisition.
didn't get any cut of that, did you?
I did not. No, no. I was gone by the time that happened, but I don't think I would have gotten any anyway.
So you started in rental,
Yeah. So that was where I got introduced to the oil and gas market.
Okay.
So when I'm go
and
ahead.
they brought you here.
They did.
Okay. All right. So you're in Midland now. You're with this company. They're about to sell out, or they did.
Well, it was 3 years later. So
3 years later. Okay.
I was with the company for at least my first 2.5 years out here.
Okay. Were you with Blue Line when you got the Outstanding Sales Associate Award?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Tell me about that. How did that happen?
Yeah. So
That's pretty impressive.
and it was. I mean, I'm still very proud of it because I was brand new to an industry. So I'll backtrack. I moved out here in 2015.
Yeah.
So in
Were you married at the time?
no, sir.
No. Okay.
No, it was just me and my dog. So it was a pretty easy move.
You and your dog.
I
Okay.
loaded up the U-Haul and I drove across the state to literally, I knew nothing about West Texas.
Really?
I mean, I seen the movie Friday Night Lights. And,
Yeah.
and that was
Nothing
it.
like it.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. That was all I knew.
Yeah.
A lot of my family worked in oil and gas, but they worked in the chemical plants and the oil refineries on the downstream sector.
Okay. Yeah.
So as far as out here, though, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. And I kind of liked that. I was excited. I was like, you know what? I'm moving to a whole new part of the state. Showed up out here. Blue Line was a phenomenal company. They gave me a lot of training. I was very young in my career, and I was still trying to figure out what I was even doing. But fast forward, that was where I really learned about the oil and gas side, because at the time I was primarily working with a lot of the drilling rigs, a lot of the upstream side of the business, a lot of the fracs, also some commercial construction. But on the oil and gas side, that's where I really got my first taste. And I quickly found that upstream is amazing, but I did not want to work in that part of the oil and gas industry because I was on call 24/7. At one point I probably had equipment on well over 40 rigs, and every night something was going wrong, and I was getting phone calls at 1 a.m., 3 a.m., 10 p.m. I mean, it was just constant. So I'd be getting up in the middle of the night. I'd be coming up, and actually our branch is right down the road from where we're filming this podcast right now, just a couple doors down.
Yeah.
And so I would get up in the middle of the night. I would come to the branch. I would meet outside haulers that were taking equipment out to location, just whatever the situation was. It was truly a 24/7 operation, which was, I guess, perfect for me at the time because I was single. I didn't have my family yet. I could live that lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, that was okay with me
It's
because,
doable.
yes,
Yeah.
now, fast forward, 9 years later, I wouldn't want to have to be on call 24/7. I'm already up half the night right now
That's
with
right,
the little ones, but
You'd be taking a call while burping.
exactly, exactly.
Who
So
wants to do that?
no. So it was but it was good. I think it cut my teeth. It kind of showed me
Sure.
that side of the oil field, and that's where I found a lot of love for the industry because it's a group of extremely hardworking people, innovative people, entrepreneurial people, and people that just don't have quit in their mentality.
Right.
Because it's not easy. A lot of people say, they could come out here and make a living, and I applaud them. I tell them, we'll pack a truck and come on, because you'll find out quickly out here it's not the easiest of places to always be.
Yeah.
And the workload, depending on where you're at in the industry, can be extremely overwhelming. And
It's true. No matter what sector that you're in.
absolutely. Well, it's a very on-demand industry. Obviously, we know oil and gas kind of. I'm partial, but I would say it controls the world.
Yeah.
It controls our economy. It controls our comforts. I mean, it's really the backbone
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
everything
And
that
it's
we
up
have
and
to have.
down.
Absolutely.
One minute it's great, and the next minute not so great.
Yeah, very much feast or famine.
Yeah.
You're
And
either-
you learned that through, I guess, launching Pinnacle,
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
obviously COVID. Tell me a little bit about Pinnacle.
Yeah, so I left the equipment rental industry, and really it was because a lot of the customers I had at the time, they were calling me asking for mechanics. Hey, all of them would own X amount of equipment, and so they would always had a hard time finding trades out here and
Right.
finding mechanics out here. So I partnered up with a gentleman named Pablo. He had a team of mechanics. I had a book of business. We put it together, and it started as a side company, really. I mean, we truly started that company with $5,000. That's
Really?
Yeah, I put in 25. He put in 2,500. We bought an old F-250 from Milford, and we put a rat pack in it, a compressor, and we were just doing mobile oil changes for skid steers, backhoes, excavators, anything with a diesel engine.
Right.
So that's how that company started. Well, 2 or 3 months into doing with just one mechanic, we were blowing up. My phone was nonstop. I had a lot of potential clients reaching out. So we decided that we both left our full-time jobs and we went full-time with Pinnacle.
Really?
We hired on. We got up to about 7 employees with a couple contract helpers as well. So we weren't ever anything major or big, but I was proud because within 14 months we hit $1 million in sales.
Wow.
And
That's awesome.
didn't make $1 million. I promise you, we
Right.
spent the money on the
Still,
back
yeah,
end because we
still.
started it with nothing. So everything we made went right back into the company to take care of new equipment and payroll, taxes, insurance, all.
It's always something.
Yeah, I mean all the expenses that come along with it, and that was probably the best thing I ever could have done because I learned so much being the business owner and seeing the back end where you lose your money, because I was always on the front side of the sales, right? So I would see, like example with Blue Line, I may average $500,000 a month with my accounts, and so I'm thinking, man, we're making some money. That's a lot of money coming in the door. I'm not seeing what Blue Line was having to spend
Sure.
to execute that business on the front and how much money went out the back door. And so whenever I started Pinnacle, I really think that made me a lot better at what I do today. Because I got to see firsthand, and I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I'll be honest, I probably shouldn't admit that, but I literally I jumped in feet first. I said, I'll figure it out. I'm very resourceful. I have a great network of a lot of awesome professionals who have helped me over the years.
Yeah.
Some really good mentors who have taught me a lot, and so that was my first real experience of running a business. Is I didn't know what I was doing, and I found out very quickly. And you learn whenever you have the business, you can't just quit a job and walk away.
Yeah.
Whenever you're one of the owners, when things are really tough, and so it tests you in a lot of different ways.
And you guys were training diesel mechanics.
Well, so we had diesel mechanics, and they were going out working on machinery and
Right.
equipment, and we were really big at the time with pipeline contractors,
Okay.
and so that was kind of who we targeted.
Because Chris, his wife, is a licensed diesel mechanic now.
She went to college for diesel tech and auto tech.
Oh wow! Well, is she looking for a job? Because I'm saying we're looking for mechanics at Dean right now.
Hey, look at this.
You know, I think that's the wall that she's been hitting. Is she got the schooling, but there's no real world like experience under her belt. So she makes fairly well at her current job, and it's nervous to take that step down and make less until she gets that experience.
Right. No, that makes sense.
So I think that's the hurdle that she's hitting right now in that industry.
So what would be your advice to somebody maybe like Chris's wife or someone else looking to take that next step in not just diesel mechanic, but in any part of the industry? What would be your advice to say just jump out and do it? Because you had to do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I guess for me that is kind of how I would lead with it. I would probably say, is she currently out in this area as well, working out here?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. See, I would say to anybody looking, come to West Texas. We'll find somewhere for you to work. First off,
out here,
just
yeah.
get out here and
Yeah.
build your network. But honestly, I would say, your network's probably going to be your biggest key. And I think that's where a lot of people outside of sales, it's my job to network.
Right.
And so that is why I do it so much, and why I've been fortunate to build a good network, because I get paid to go do that. And not everybody does.
Sure.
And I've had people tell me that, well, yeah, man, you say to network, but you get paid to do that. I don't. I've got a job. I've got to be in the shop all day working. I don't have time to go meet these people.
Yeah, I got to spin a wrench or something. And,
Right.
yeah.
And so I have thought on that quite a bit, and I think the answer still is build your network. And how you do that, nowadays we're all so connected through social medias. You don't have to do everything in person, because I understand a busy schedule. Come 5 o'clock, I don't want to go to networking events. I want to be home with my family, helping with the boys, and just spending that little bit of time that I get with my family. But I still think, regardless of your position in life, building, and you don't have to build a network with 30,000 connections on LinkedIn, and you got to have a phone with 6,000 contacts. No, I mean, really seek out what you want to do. So if it happened to be diesel mechanic work, look into the companies in your area, right? So obviously diesel mechanics can almost work on anything. And so it's a little broad when I say that, but there are so many organizations that are specific to rental companies, which are going to have mechanics.
Right.
The Pipeliners Association, right? I use us because I know that one the best over in the other association out here. If you were a diesel mechanic and you came to one of our meetings and you introduced yourself to, I'm going to guess, 10 people, one of those people are going to call you looking for a job.
Wow.
Because most of the people that come to the meetings are in decision-making positions within their company. And most of the time, what I found out here, something such as diesel mechanic work, it's in such hot demand that they will literally say, okay, well, you've got experience, or you've got, even if it's not experience, maybe you just have the schooling and you're lacking that experience. These companies will give you the opportunity
Wow.
to learn that experience, or to earn that experience, I guess, and have a chance to go and build your resume up. Because out here, and I know I'm partial to West Texas, but
Right.
skilled trade positions we're lacking in.
Yeah.
And obviously, when the market falls down, we do have more of an influx of available employees. When it's busy, we don't. But since I've been out here for almost 9 years, diesel mechanics is one that I would say you can go, come to one of our pipeliners meeting, and 1 out of 10 people in there could probably offer you a job or connect you with somebody who's looking for somebody just like you to help them in their shop, or to help them on the right of way, or to have a field mechanic available when their equipment breaks down, or to run PM services to keep their equipment up and running, or whatever it may be. And it might not be the exact job you want, and I think that's something that people should be okay with. I mean, we all know where we want to be at, what we want to do. But like Pinnacle, for example, I never had the desire to be a business owner. That just wasn't.
Sure.
I never had the entrepreneurial mindset. I credit that to my previous business partner, because he did, and I kind of learned a lot from him, and he kind of gave me that bug for it. But the best thing I ever did was take a job as a business owner that I didn't even know I wanted, because it taught me so much more, and it challenged me in so many other ways that I grew as a person, professionally, personally. And a lot of that, what I learned doing that, I failed at a lot of things doing it too. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say we ran a smooth company. It wasn't. My poor wife, she was there for the long haul through everything. And she even said when we shut the company down, she was like, maybe you should just consult, or, go back to sales for a little while and catch your breath, because that was a lot. Like, the last 2 years have been extremely hectic and stressful on you. But so, to get back on track there, even if it's a position on the diesel mechanic side that, you may want to work on cranes because that's what you find to be the most interesting, but there may be an opportunity to start with a company that doesn't have any cranes, but they've got backhoes, skid steers, dozers, excavators, motor graders, anything else. Who knows, you may get in there and find that you enjoy working on those pieces of machinery a lot more than the cranes, or you find the pros and cons of it. But I would just say build your network. Even if it's not your job to have a big network, try to connect with people that are in your similar space. And I know that takes a lot of people out of their comfort zone, because it's kind of weird to, possibly strike up a conversation with somebody that you don't know. But you may see somebody at the store, and you can tell that they just got off work and they're in mechanic clothes and they're covered in grease. And you're at the gas station, and hey man, look like you've been working today. You mind if I ask who you work for? I guarantee you can start conversations like that. And so having that mindset of always kind of be looking, and always be looking to connect. That old movie, Glengarry, Glenn Ross, always be closing.
Yeah.
Well, I like to always be connecting. So ABC,
That's brilliant.
always be connecting.
Yeah.
I've met so many potential and current, customers or clients or friends or mentors, or people that I've mentored at the gym, at Starbucks, HEB.
Right.
You may be at a golf tournament and casually run into somebody. I mean, there's a million different places that you can meet connections. It's not always in a stuffy networking luncheon where everybody's dressed up and you feel uncomfortable and you don't know where to start. I mean, it could be as simple as you running into somebody at the gas station and you see that they've got a mechanic truck sitting outside. Hey, you know what? I'm trying to get into that industry out here. Well, anybody you'd recommend I could talk to? And I'm willing to bet some money in my pocket right now that person will most likely,
Connect you. Yeah.
And it might not be the connection you need at the time.
Right.
But it is a connection. And so
that's brilliant.
You can kind of continue with that mindset, and 6 months of looking for connections will amaze you how many people you'll connect with.
So let me ask you real quick, what in the sell side of the conversation, I used to sell radio advertisement, and the one thing they really drilled into me was continuing your education, right? It's not about going to college, but constantly be reading, listening, watching other professionals who have excelled in the industry.
That's a good point.
To keep growing, right? And like one of my favorites is like Victor Antonio or Brian Tracy. The Psychology of Selling is a really good book.
It is.
Or the Mastering the Upsell is another really good one. So say we've got some new guys who've been selling for a little bit, but have never really gotten that first big bite and had anything pay off, haven't closed really anything. What tools or resources would you suggest to motivate them to go for that chase?
Grit. I hate to say it that way. It because it is overwhelming. I mean, when I first moved out, I mean, even now, I've consulted for multiple companies over the years, and I'll tell them, like I tell anybody, if you want me to build any type of business for you, I need a minimum 6 months. And some people look at me, 6 months is a long time. It is.
Yeah.
It is, but do you understand the sales cycle? And so you start asking some of these questions, and you put them on the defensive a little bit, and that's not my intention, but I found over the years it takes time, and it takes a lot of determination internally, right? Somebody I've listened to in the past that I know there's mixed reviews on, but Grant Cardone. He's a self-made real estate guru, made a lot of money, and but what I like about Grant Cardone is his attitude. He's got this killer attitude that, I've listened to a few of his books, and when you finish listening to one of his books, you just feel like you're the Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, you're ready to go sell, you're ready to go get it. And some people naturally have that more internally than others do. So I do agree with you on picking up books, on finding different type of books. I mean, you could Google top 10 sales books right now, and you'd find some Zig Ziglar. You would find a list of different authors that you could look up. And so I would say start there. I mean, there's going to be a lot of popular books that you could. But I think you should also tell yourself that this is a part of the sales process. So maybe educate yourself on the sales process more than the hoorah, let's go out and sell. Like, that part is important, but you understanding the process, right? So example, like the company I work for now, Dean. When Mr. Anthony approached me about coming on board, working with him, I told him, I said, well, what are y'all looking to do? What are your projections? What's the plans? And I'm trying to see where I can be of value, right? And I told him up front, I said, to do what I think I can do, for your company, and I think we could work together well, I said, I need at least 6 months. 6 months to a year before you really sit back and you try to evaluate if I'm worth the investment or not. And he kind of looked at me like that, okay, well, that's kind of precise. Why don't you explain that a little bit? And I said, okay. So in our line of business, it starts if you're a potential client, right? I got to meet with you, which takes time to get a meeting. Right. I mean, that's literally, it's an underrated skill set, in my opinion. Being able to set meetings, cold call people, get them interested in meeting with you, and you've got 30 seconds on the phone to do it. Right. Because these people get 100 phone calls a week just like you. And everybody's asking for 30 minutes of their time, and they only have so much time, right? So getting the meeting takes time. Once I get the meeting with you, I've got to get a MSA or a contract in place. Well, that goes from your legal team to my legal team, usually back and forth a couple of times. We agree on everything, it gets signed. Well, it may take me a month to get a meeting with you, and then it may take me a month and a half to get the MSA signed. Right. And that's a fast track. So now we're 2.5, 3 months into potentially meeting with you, or potentially having business with your client. So we're 3 months in. Now you're giving me the opportunity to bid on some projects. I now have to bid and win a project. So that may take another month. So there's 4 months. Right. And then by the time we win a project, even if it's a short, 2-week project, our guys have to go out, spend the 2 weeks doing it. And so by the time we actually send you an invoice, it's been 5 months. Yeah. And by the time we receive a check from you, we're probably, depending on the pay terms, whether they're 30, 45, 60.
Right. You're into 7 months now, probably.
Now we're into 7 months. So if you hire a sales individual and you go run their revenue report on day 90 and they don't have much on there, oh, well then, man, we made a bad hire. It's time to fire. And this happens so much. I've seen it with friends of mine. I've had companies tell me, I'll give you a month. We'll see what you can do. And I tell them, I'm not your guy. So I appreciate your time, but I'm not even going to waste my time for that.
Yeah, because it can't be done.
No.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, there are, faster sales cycles depending on what you're selling. I mean, equipment rental, I could have a credit application filled out the same day and send out a dozer to your project tomorrow. So, I mean, there are different sales cycles depending on what you're doing, but understanding the sales cycle that you're working in within your industry, and then set realistic time frames. And just know that, especially starting a new book of business, it's hands down one of the most frustrating and hardest things to do. I mean, I've done it multiple times where I've started with new companies and basically you're starting from scratch. You may have your contacts already, but I've got to set contracts up and I've got to get this company introduced to that company and we've got to go through pricing. We got to negotiate and there's a process to it. And so I would say to anybody new to sales, really understand that cycle of it and give yourself realistic time frames. And I think I don't really know if it would matter what you're selling. I think it's going to take you 6 months minimum to start and build a new book of business.
Wow.
I mean,
How have you handled in the sales world, because you were the most outstanding sales guy representative. You won that award in 2016.
it was 16. Yes,
16. How have you handled maybe a setback? What would you say to somebody who's into that 6, 7, 8 months and they're not seeing any traction
Yep.
because they're constantly getting either doors slammed in their face, they're not getting those wins, they're not getting those sales, and they're getting defeated? What would be your word of advice to that?
And it's going to sound cliche, and I don't mean it to, but yeah, I'm sure we've all seen that illustration of the guy pushing a giant boulder up a hill. And so when you're at that pinnacle, when you're at the peak of that little hill, whenever it's about to, and once you get that ball of steam rolling down the other side, you almost can't stop it, right? That's what I would say. If you're in month 6, 7, 8, you're banging your head against the wall. You're literally frustrated on a daily basis. I myself personally, and I've been in that situation, I would step back and reevaluate what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. I would step back and I would evaluate, am I chasing the right decision makers? Am I spending the right amount of time with the right amount of people?
That's great.
And because that's the hard part about sales that a lot of people don't know unless you're in sales, there's not a cookie cutter way to do it. Everybody develops their own style. Now you may listen to the gurus like Grant Cardone and some of these more famous people, and you pick up bits and pieces from how they do it. But essentially, I think every person in business development is going to have to develop their own style. And for me, when I hit those lulls, it pisses me off.
Yeah.
And it kind of motivates me to pick up my phone a little bit more. It doesn't mean I make better sales calls when I'm in that attitude or in that mode because I'm very aggressive. I'm very much, because you feel the weight on top of you.
Sure.
I mean, you really do. It's a stressful position. And I think everybody may react a little bit differently on that one. If I could give anybody any advice, you can outwork bad luck in sales. And a lot of people don't want to hear that because it's work. In sales, I think we get a bad rep for hanging out at the golf course all day and going to fancy dinners. And, we don't have a real job. We just entertain. You just take people out.
You got a cool expense account.
Yeah. I mean, you get to do all the fun stuff. You go to golf tournaments, and that is a part of our job. I mean, and I get that. But I challenge those people to spend 6 months doing what we do and then come back and see if you think it's all
That's great. That's
all,
brilliant.
all fun and games. Because, I mean, I've had people over the years who lost their job and have called me and just said, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to go into sales because I can't find anything else right now. That'll be just something I can get into.
Everybody can do it. Yeah.
And it's that attitude, and it cracks me up because I'm like, all right, bud, well, I'll talk to you in 90 days whenever you've had your teeth kicked in by every vendor in town and nobody wants to do
You're
any
looking
business.
for a new job.
And you're looking for, because that attitude, and I think it's just a misconception. And LinkedIn and social media doesn't help us because you see us people in BD posting the golf tournaments and posting the events we go to, because that is part of what we do to help brand, like the Pipeliners Association or Oilfield Helping Hands or Sky High for Kids or whatever it is that we're working with or events we're attending. But you don't see the 6 a.m. sitting in your office scratching your head trying to figure out what to even do, right? Like, there's not a playbook for this. Most jobs,
Great point.
I feel a lot of jobs are reactive, once something happens. Like, I'll go back to the equipment rental industry, right? I mean, once I rented a piece of machinery, well, now the mechanic had a job to do because he needed to go look at it to make sure it was good to go. Then the truck driver had a job to do because he had to load it up and take it to location. Well, then the inside sales rep had a job to do because they had to draw up the contract and get it ready for the customer to sign.
Right.
And then from there, once they finished it, we had to go pick it back up, right? But it all started with me having to be proactive and find that client and create that opportunity for your team to have a chance to showcase their talents.
It's all about that initial connection.
Exactly.
Very first one.
Exactly.
That's awesome. You know, you dipped your toe a little bit into talking about Helping Hands and the Pipeliners Association. Tell us about your community engagement. How important is it to you to be involved in the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think, at least for me personally, I truly enjoy it. I showed up to Midland. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. And I can't speak for every community, for whoever may listen to this, but I can speak for this community. And if you embrace this community, the community will embrace you. And of course, a lot of this was my job. I'm not going to sit here and act like I was some saint that showed up ready to volunteer my time and hours to every nonprofit I came
I got plenty of
across.
time. Where can I serve? Yeah.
Right. So, I'll be honest, it was very much, initially when I started, it wasn't to benefit anybody but me. And so I say that admittedly, in a selfish way. I went to these networking events. I joined these associations. I spent time outside of normal working hours because I knew for my job it was going to be beneficial for me to meet and greet and get to know people.
Right.
And at the time, it was a good fit for me naturally. Like I said, I didn't have my family yet. I didn't have a whole lot waiting for me at the apartment every night when I left work or left the office. So, going to a networking mixer from 6 to 8:30 p.m., cool. I didn't have anything else that night, right? But then you get to start working with some of these associations, and then you get to start seeing the people that you're advocating for and the ones that you're actually raising funds for. And you get to see what difference, even if it's a small difference, the difference that you are making. And that's when I really got involved in it, when I said, okay, yes, it could benefit me personally and for my career by being involved with these. But I genuinely, I enjoy the aspect of seeing what we do actually matter. And so, but it took me selfishly going to start before I realized how much I would actually enjoy what I do and what we do with, for the community. And like you were talking about the Pipeliners, working with 311 Ministries, and, we've worked with a lot of different nonprofits over the years, and you get to meet the people at those nonprofits, and you really hear the stories and who it's going to help.
Right.
And the older I get, I'm 33 now. I have learned that life is hard. Not everybody is dealt the same hand. I'm very much a you get up and control your destiny type of person, but there are a lot of people that are put in a lot of bad positions and situations that they didn't deserve, or it wasn't warranted, right? Life can be unfair. It can be cruel. So the older I get, the more you realize how blessed you may be. And so I enjoy helping and lending a hand where I can, and trying to work with others who don't necessarily always have that opportunity, right? And I can't remember which one had touched on one of the associations that helps with the like addiction and alcoholics and all that.
Idle Hands.
Does
a great work.
I come from a long family of alcoholics and drug addicts, and so, and I don't say that boastfully. I say I come from a lot of functioning alcoholics, truthfully. So I know what it's like for family members who got that second chance, who lived in a halfway house, who somebody took a chance on them and gave them a job when they might not have had the resume that deserved it. Because sometimes it just takes that little bit of spark from somebody to give you internally the confidence you need to change your life.
Right.
And so I love working with associations like that who have that kind of mission, who we're not out here advocating to raise money just to raise money. We're raising money because we genuinely want to help whatever demographic it is that our mission is for. But you see the good it does for people, and so I think that was something unique about the Permian, is that as far as community engagement, we've got so many different associations. We've got 1 million organizations. You can find ones that pertain to your job, like a chemical association for what your company does in the chemical industry. For my company, we build pipelines and facilities. So naturally, the Pipeliners Association is a good fit for me. The Natural Gas Society of the Permian Basin, obviously, if you work within the natural gas space, that's probably a good association for you to attend or to get involved with, because it's not only going to benefit your career, but you'll see a lot of these organizations are tied to other nonprofits that
Right.
all kind of support and help each other. So I would say that was where I try to be involved. Is I only have so much time, so I can't attend everything.
Yeah.
So I really go for those where their missions speak to me, and for those associations that I know mingle with what I do for a living and the network that I want to be in front of. And so I try to
Right.
combine those, and I think that's where we could find, I mean, at least for me, that's the community engagement. And I mean, over the years, I've been a part of the Pipeliners, Oilfield Helping Hands, Oilfield Connections. A couple years ago, I worked with the Sky High for Kids group.
Right.
On, I mean, just a lot of different things out here that I've been a part of. And yes, they were a lot business based, but some of those I worked with because I genuinely liked the mission and thought what they were doing matters. The 311 Ministries is a great one. Idle Hands is a great one. So that's kind of where I've been at. I mean, I started the community engagement more based on the associations and everything.
Right.
But then I kind of found where it turned into more, something more that I enjoyed doing more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
So
I hear your heart in that, and I can resonate with that because that's a passion that we have here at Performance is the involvement in the community. But we want to be intentional about who we serve with. We're not just going to throw dollars at whoever just to get the tax write-off.
Right.
Right. We want to find out where people in this organization, where they're bent toward, and then push the organization to serve in those areas. And I kind of hear you saying that there's something for everyone and within your industry. One more thing I want to hit on before we wrap things up is you had a passion not just toward community engagement, but you had a passion toward trade work.
Absolutely.
Speak just real briefly about that and what the oil and gas industry is lacking in that area.
Thank you for bringing it up because that is something that I am passionate about. So, with the Pipeliners Association, our mission is to raise funds originally for STEM students, so science, technology, education, mathematics, right? That next generation. What we found over the years is that we have a huge lack in trade schools. We have a huge lack in skilled trades. My generation was told you have to go to college to be successful.
Right.
I hate that. We need to go, it actually needs to start in the early high school years. And I think we're starting to see more. I know Midland's got a program in place.
Right.
I believe Odessa as well. We're starting to see a little bit more of that transition where we are talking to these kids in high school about being a CDL driver, about an equipment operator, a diesel mechanic, a journeyman, electrician, plumber, whatever the case may be. And we need to have as much enthusiasm as we do trying to convince a high school kid that you have to go to a university. You need to go spend $100,000 on your education because that's the only way that you're going to be successful in life. If I could redo life, I probably wouldn't have went to college. Honestly, when my boys get old enough, unless they want to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, something that's going to require a specific degree, I'm not going to push for them to go to college because I hate to say it, I just don't feel it prepares people in the way that we thought it would.
Right.
And so trade schools, I think, get left behind. And so there's a stigma where, the white collar and blue collar, right? White collar sticks their nose up to the blue collar. And I'm a white collar guy. I mean, I've always worked in the sales, but the jobs that I've done, I've worked for companies that we required and needed the trades to complete the work.
And they just weren't there.
And they weren't there.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's an industry problem. The company Dean I'm with, we've got our home office out of Louisiana, and it's a big problem over in New Orleans, just like it is out here in West Texas. So it's not just a geographical problem. This is a nationwide. We are losing, and I can't remember the statistics on it, but every 10 years or so, the percentage drops of trades that are actually in the market, hireable trades, or tradesmen or tradeswomen. So long-windedly, I think we really need to advocate at the high school level. We need to express the stability in these jobs, the amount of money that can be made in these jobs, and we need to express that there's not a stigma between the two. Just because you decide to go to a university and you decide to go to a diesel mechanic school,
We shouldn't look down at that guy who wants to go to
Absolutely.
the mechanic school.
And I hate to say, when I was in college, I feel like
happens.
it did.
Yeah.
Or in high school. And when I was in high school,
point.
I don't even remember us talking about trade schools. We didn't, there used to be auto shop in class or in high schools, wood
right.
shop, ways that.
But that was all those kids. It seemed like it was those kids. And we got to get away from that.
Right.
You say that.
Yeah.
When I was in school, I graduated in 2000, and my dad was a diesel mechanic and a firefighter. And it was always like, that is beneath going to college, right? And so it was put into my head that I needed to go to college and do something better than what he was doing. But when I look back at it, for most of my career, what he was making at per hour as a diesel mechanic was far more than what I was making in
now.
news,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And if I had known that at the time, because I'd already been learning from him, he used to do oil field kind of freelance mechanic. So like when these smaller companies like out in Post and stuff would need a mechanic, he would drive over there and do work, right? And he'd make a killing doing
That's
stuff.
exactly what the company I had would do. I mean, we work for that, that niche right there. You're 100%. There's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, and it's just wild to me that at that year, 2000-ish, that was looked down upon. And now society is begging for those workers.
Right.
If we had encouraged it then, we wouldn't be where we are right now.
It's true.
100%. And I mean, none of us know the future, but I can tell you, AI. I don't know if you ever play around with the artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I've got a young actual chemical engineer who I mentor on the sales side, and he's teaching me a lot about the technology side. So it's been
Right.
A great
good balance.
relationship.
Yeah.
I truly think in 10 years you're going to have AI replacing a lot of your college-educated people and what it can do and the efficiencies it's going to
Sure, that's a
create.
great point.
I think if you want to prepare your kids for the real world over the next 30 years, we can all agree that electricity is not going anywhere. We can all agree that the infrastructure we have to have
Right.
is not going anywhere. We're all, we're not going back to huts or teepees anytime soon. We're going to need plumbers.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. We'll see. But all those trades are a absolute necessity in society.
Yeah.
And the further that gap goes, just like you were saying over there, sir, that you're finding that we're begging for these people now, right?
Right.
And we don't have enough trained people to go out and complete these jobs. And the ones that can are starting to age out of the industries. They're retiring. There's a lot of lost knowledge that we're going to just lose. And so I think we need to start advocating and pushing harder for trades because I think that's where the money's going to be, because it's boots in the dirt can't be replaced by a computer quite yet.
It's true.
Maybe in 100 years they'll have little robots running around, running
way
the
to think
plumbing in
about
our
it, yeah.
house. But I think your white collar side, your office type jobs, are far more at risk
Yeah.
than your actual hands-on boots in the dirt
Right.
out there actually doing the work that we need to have done. So
And thank you for leading that charge and waving that flag, because there's not many people like you, Derrick, who are wanting to see that come back and wanting to see the value that needs to be placed on those men and women who find that's where their calling is or what their work is going to be and how they value and how they're needed. And I applaud you for that. I appreciate that.
Well, I
I want,
appreciate
I
that.
want to ask you a couple questions before we wrap this up.
Yep.
One is, could you still do 100 push-ups?
I probably could, but I'm going to be hurting on those last couple. I promise you that. I mean, it could be the halfway push-ups there toward the end, but yeah, we probably could.
Could you do them back when you were in football?
Honestly, when I was weighing over 300, probably not. No, because that was just a lot of weight to have to push around. Now, I could probably get closer to it, but yeah, but even back then, and I was a super strong guy, but I mean, just pushing that much personal body weight around gets heavy quick.
Do you still live by the 3-second rule? If something falls on the floor, you're going to eat it within 3 seconds?
Oh, I mean, I'm up to the 5 or 6 second rule
Really?
at this point. We'll be all right. That's probably why I've never had COVID.
That's brilliant.
That's how you keep
genius
the
right
immune
there.
system strong.
Yeah, that's true. If pipeliners, because that's the associations you're in, if pipeliners had a walk-up song, what would yours be?
Oh, Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle.
There you go.
That's
I
it.
love it. Yeah.
That's it.
That just really gets you fired
Just one
up
of those
there,
that
right?
gets the blood pumping a little
Right.
bit. Welcome to the Thunderdome, as we say in West Texas,
That's
right?
true.
So we
That's
have to
true.
have
It's a
our
great
own little
point.
remix.
It's a great point. Just to wrap this up, I want to ask you two questions. I do this with all of our guests coming in. Who do you listen to? Like we're sitting at this table and we're having a conversation. Who do you allow to pour into you that you really just kind of sit back and allow to speak to you?
Whew. Yeah, that's a good question. As of lately, like author-wise, book-wise, Robert Kiyosaki. And I don't know if you're familiar with any of his. So he kind of got famous decades ago with the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I listened to that, and I kind of gone down a rabbit hole of his for the last 6-8 months because I really want to get into the real estate side of business as well.
Okay.
And so kind of how you touched on earlier, I failed like a lot of people do when they graduate college, is that they think they've learned and they don't pick up another book. Yeah. And I went years without reading. And then it wasn't until, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 years ago, I started picking up audiobooks because I drive so much. And I'm happy to say now I probably finish a book once a month. I probably go through a book a month because, like tomorrow, for example, I've got to drive to San Angelo for a meeting. That's a 2-hour drive one way. It's a 2-hour drive back.
It's a book.
So you can start knocking down a lot of books that way. And so, Robert Kiyosaki's one that I've been listening to. I'm on his cash flow quadrants right now, one of the books that I've just kind of gone down. But I like him because he challenges the middle-class mindset. And I think that's the bigger picture from his books that I've taken, is that we've kind of become accustomed to the way society is. And he kind of challenges a lot of those things, and then he gives you a different perspective on how you look at assets, liabilities, how to build up kind of that self-worth and then your net worth, basically. So, but I'd say, the last couple months, I've been on a big Robert Kiyosaki kick.
Wow. What do you want to be known for?
Just being a positive influence. We have so much crap in this world. Excuse my bluntness, but
I'm sure you can say worse than that. Yeah.
I normally would have if I didn't have a mic in front of me. But we just have so much bad energy in this world.
Yeah.
Bad things happening to good people. And at the end of the day, I've been, for the last year or two, I've been really working on my relationship with Jesus and trying to grow spiritually. So I think for me, that's more important now than anything, is just being a positive energy and influence on people to, when they walk away from a conversation with me, that they feel uplifted, that they feel better. Because I've just been around so many bad people that drain you. Yeah. Energy's contagious, I promise you. I mean, we all put off vibes. It's not just a catchy slogan nowadays. Yep. It's true. I mean, there's a lot of science behind it. So I think for me personally, if I could just leave behind, a positive influence or demeanor, that's probably more important than anything.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate
absolutely.
it. Thank you for what you do for our community and what the Pipeliners Association does. And it's been a real joy to have you on. Thank you for joining with us this week. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next week.
Elevate your operation with Performance Chemical Company, the pioneers in redefining chemical solutions for the oil and gas industry in the Permian Basin. Unveiling groundbreaking ideas since 2017, our dry chemistry plant stands as a testament to innovation. Our products and services revolutionize water treatment, production, midstream, and saltwater disposals. We're your strategic partners in optimizing investments, slashing operating expenses. Performance Chemical Company. How you get there matters.